And we need to think about that too in a much broader context with what took place around the nation with COVID, because just recently, Joe Rogan had RFK Jr. on his show. Now, I was scrolling through Twitter the other day, and that's how I stumbled upon this story. Actually, when I saw that Joe Rogan was tweeting out at a guy named Peter Hotez. I didn't even know that he was on the show in the past, but apparently he was a guest of Rogan in the past, and they had a little friendly debate about COVID vaccines and that kind of thing and taking care of your body. But the tweet went something like this. Joe Rogan is offering $100,000 for Peter Hotez to debate RFK Jr. And now there's been a back and forth online between Hotez and Joe Rogan, consistently basically sounding like this. Joe Rogan saying, you're not answering whether or not you will debate, you're not committing to anything, and we want to hear from you. If you really do care about this issue and you want the truth to be heard, then come let your voice be heard on my show, which has a bigger reach than any other mainstream platform. So come on my show, debate RFK Jr. And of course, you can probably guess what has taken place after that. Hotez has been ducking and dodging and doing his best to try to make Joe Rogan look like a moral reprobate, simply so that he doesn't have to have the pressure of answering for some of his ideas. Now, just a little bit of background on Peter Hotez, just for the sake of you guys who wonder why this even matters. So Peter Hotez was trotted out on multiple different news networks during COVID, and he is a vaccinologist and was an apologist for the vaccine, and even an apologist for why children should be vaccinated. And so that's why Joe had him on his show in the past. By the way, I'll give you a little bit of what that sounded like right here.
I'm not as cautious about my diet as I should be. I'm a junk foodaholic, actually.
Well, that seems like a terrible thing for your health.
It is a terrible thing for my health, and something my wife is working on.
But that seems ridiculous for someone who works with health.
Yeah.
What's going on with you, man?
Sometimes, man, I just don't get it right.
How often?
What?
How often?
How often do I steal a bag of chips or something like that?
How often do you eat garbage?
I don't know. No, hopefully not every day, but
hopefully not every day.
Yeah, maybe a couple of times a week.
Oh.
That's what with Rachel, my daughter with autism. That's like our thing, is to go to the it's called the burger joint, or to Shake Shack to get a cheeseburger. We'll sneak some fries.
So you
living large, we call it.
Like that mouth pleasure so much, you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of
I
health.
am. Yeah. I have to concede that's the case.
Well, I don't have to tell you, but there's a large body of data that connects poor diet to a host of diseases. Mm-hmm. That seems like a crazy decision for a guy in your line of work.
There you go. Sometimes it's not all brain. It's something else.
So maybe this is why Hotez is very reluctant to face off with RFK Jr. on Joe Rogan's show. Now, I'll be the first to admit, RFK Jr., I hope he dethrones Joe Biden. But he is a little bit of a kook himself. He's got some pretty radical ideas, but I'll also give it to him. His book about the real Anthony Fauci was actually really insightful and had some objectively true stuff in it about the way in which hospitals and the CDC and other places colluded together to handle COVID, and the way in which they did it was not that scientific at the end of the day. So RFK Jr. had some really important and insightful things to say about it, and at least we should hear about it. But we have Peter Hotez giving us his original tweet that started this firestorm and Joe Rogan's challenge, and I want you to see it here. So this is what he originally tweeted out to kind of get Joe Rogan in the position to challenge him to a debate. This is what Hotez said. Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to stem Joe Rogan's vaccine misinformation. And from the online attacks I'm receiving after this absurd podcast, it's clear many actually believe this nonsense. Now, the reason I wanted to save that to the very end is just say this. If you actually care about the nonsense being refuted, then stand up for yourself and debate. Now, I get it. You might say, well, Peter Hotez really isn't a debater. That's not really what he's good at. He's a doctor. Fine. Joe Rogan, even in his original kind of challenge to Hotez, said, find the person who is willing to debate. Find the person who is willing to stand up for this side of the debate about the endless, experimental vaccinations being given to people and the suppression of all those who wish to suggest that maybe we should have a little bit more research before we start shoving experimental vaccines in people's bodies. There's been this conversation of like, okay, so if you want to bring out the best of the best, you bring them out. amount, and we'll still give you the $100,000, but let's debate this idea. So if Hotez really wanted to put his money where his mouth is, like literally, he could stand up for his ideas and go on the show. Now, I want to reiterate something before I get kind of to the final point of all of this, which is just simply this, that the people who originally voiced concern over the speed at which we were giving people this vaccine, the ways in which we were giving it to people who were ultimately healthy and may not necessarily need a vaccine to protect them from the more deadly effects of COVID. I'll be the first to admit that I still wonder about this, but it seems to be that those who were kind of older, elderly people, they seem to be the ones who the vaccine really should have been focused on, whereas much more younger, healthy people really had nothing to fear from COVID. That seems to be objectively true. And frankly, we're 2 years past this thing, and we're seeing all sorts of repercussions, including the Johnson & Johnson vaccine being pulled from the shelves in America, finally. And yet we're still talking about masking. We're still talking about giving the vaccine to small children who objectively, 100% did not need the COVID shot. Suffice to say, in the early days when people were voicing some of this concern, they were threatened, they were censored, they were kicked off platforms, they were given information labels, which I'll probably still get one on this segment here. Saying, be careful to become informed about COVID. All these people that were informing us, they themselves weren't informed and still consistently want to try to come off as the expert class giving and delivering objective information. But we all know that they're just human, we're just human, and we can all be honest about this. And so the way to really parse ideas in a society is not just to listen to the supposed expert class. And I guess that's the point at the end of the day, is that the way to really suss out ideas in a society is to do exactly what Joe Rogan is doing. And what Joe Rogan shows us is that there is a changing of the guard. There is a changing of the way we are going to process information in society. We are no longer going to let the media do our thinking for us, but now we want open dialogue. We want free discourse. We want free thinking. And we want people to come from different perspectives and give that information to us. And we want to be able to suss out the truth for ourselves. We're living in a new world. Joe Rogan shows us this. This is why podcasts are all the rage these days, and more people are leaving the mainstream legacy media to get their information from podcasters. Because open debate is the way that we think now. It is the way that we move around censorship and the extortion to do what the experts tell us who might have a financial incentive with big pharma. This is the way things have to work now. And our world is better for it too. Not only is our world better when no one shows up to Dodger Stadium to honor the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence who don't deserve honor, but our world is better too when we have the free discourse, the free ability to discuss ideas without the fears of censorship. Censorship and extortion no longer work, and we won't allow it. We want to live in a society where the best ideas win, and not just the ideas that certain people with an agenda want to win. So I think what Joe Rogan is doing here is just another indication that when we take a stand, when we really lift our voice, we can make a difference in society. I don't know about you, but I want to live in a society where the best ideas win. So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.